Musa Abu Marzouk, who is a senior figure in the Hamas movement, he made some interesting statements. He made some interesting statements in relation to the United States and the Biden administration. He said that they're expressing readiness for a dialogue with the United States, signaling a potential shift, the article stated, in international engagement following the Gaza ceasefire. The most relevant things that he mentioned in his interview with the New York Times, actually, is apart from the fact that they're prepared for a dialogue with America and achieving understandings on everything, that they're also inviting them to go. He can come and see, he's saying, right? The Trump administration and their representatives, they can come and see and talk to the people and try and understand their feelings and wishes, so that the American position can be based on the interests of all the parties and not only one party, according to Abu Marzouk. And there was also one very significant statement coming from him, is the fact that he said, Musa Abu Marzouk, if it wasn't for President Trump, his insistence on ending the war, and his dispatching of a decisive representative, the deal wouldn't have happened. And he was referring to Witkoff, the envoy of Donald Trump in the Middle East, Stephen Witkoff, who also was reported to consider what? And that's again based on a report coming from the NBC, actually. He's considering to visit Gaza to help sustain the ceasefire, according to a member of Trump's transition team familiar with the truce process. If Donald Trump's envoy visits Gaza, that's going to be something very significant. I don't recall seeing any representative at a very senior level from the United States in Gaza. The majority of the time, they're of course in the West Bank with the Palestinian Authority, but Gaza, that's something that we haven't seen, in particular after Hamas was democratically elected in Gaza. The only senior figure was the previous president, Jimmy Carter, who was monitoring the elections in 2006 and saying how democratic they were, the most democratic elections in the Arab world. And his organization was monitoring those elections, but not acting members of the administration. This is going to be something significant if it does happen. And it is required. I mean, the shift when it comes to the United States administration is very much required at one point. And there could be perhaps a shift sometime down the line, especially with these reports, with the fact that Trump pushed for this ceasefire. Again, regardless of any statements, I mean, the main thing is the actions that are being implemented. At the end of the day, we do have a ceasefire. Yes, you could see certain breaches here and there, like there was this breach yesterday. Today, less reports of any breaches, really. There were no reported breaches today inside of Gaza. But there's an escalation in the West Bank. But there is definitely potential. And the final thing that I wanted to talk to you about is a statement coming from one of the Hamas figures abroad, Bassem Naim. Bassem Naim is a man who has been talking a lot in the past 15 months to international media. And he's now saying that the negotiations during the coming stages will continue on the resistance terms. We're due to start negotiations or hearing about these negotiations in just over 10 days. On day 16, negotiations are due to take place on phases 2 and 3 of the war. Israel is trying to ignore these negotiations, but they're secretly dipping in information to the Israeli public, like, we're going to withdraw from Netzarim eventually, we're going to withdraw from the buffer zone, we're going to be withdrawing from the Philadelphia corridor. All of that is coming with talks about the escalation in the West Bank, so that people can focus on the West Bank and focus less so on the negotiations where Israel is going to have to pay much heavier prices when it comes to Gaza, and the fact that they will be withdrawing from all of these bases that they, well, primarily the Netzarim line, but also the Philadelphia corridor. And the Palestinians were seen now, of course, moving and checking all of the destroyed vehicles inside of Gaza. So Bassem Naim is saying that it's our conditions. It's not going to be Israel's conditions, it's not going to be anyone's conditions. It's going to be our conditions implemented in the next rounds in Gaza. He said that the pressure within the Zionist community on Netanyahu because of his failure was one of the factors that led him to submit to the resistance conditions in the agreement. And that this is a humanitarian phase. However, the next phases are going to have more results coming from them. Now, when it comes to results, today there was a record number of aid trucks going into Gaza, with the United Nations reporting 897 aid trucks going into Gaza. This is the biggest number of aid trucks I have ever heard of going into Gaza in one day, in a matter of 24 hours. Hamas, during the negotiations, said, we want 600 aid trucks a day. We need 600 aid trucks a day at least. And now this is a very significant number, because before the 7th of October, around 500 aid trucks a day used to get into Gaza. So this number is very significant. Naim also said that the people from the south who will be returning to the north, because there are scenes of people going back to the north now, these are people who were displaced internally in the northern part of Gaza, to the north of Gaza City and the Netzarim line that Israel built inside of Gaza. He said this is going to happen after the first week. People returning, if they're going to walk to the north, they're going to all be able to do that after the first week. There will be 1,000 Palestinian prisoners from Gaza who will be released in the second phase. Some of them will be going to foreign countries after receiving their confirmation, in fact, okaying it with them, their approval, and also that we will be seeking to completely empty the Israeli prisons from Palestinian prisoners. So clearly, Hamas are not only confident when it comes to the negotiations, they have big ambitions when it comes to the prisoners too. And what people need to remember is we're only in the humanitarian phase now. The top figures in the army, the commanders that Hamas kidnapped on the 7th of October, they're going to be left for the final phase. And when we reach that final phase, Israel won't have many options to try and tell the Palestinian resistance, oh no, we're not going to release X and Y. Because from their perspective, they're going to have to finalize everything to do with the prisoners of war, and they're going to have to pay any price that the Palestinian resistance asks them to pay.